it feels very tense right now around the faithful. It feels very nerve-wracking, anxiety-inducing, all those nervous feelings for my San Francisco 49ers as they head into their Week 8 matchup in this 2024 season against the Dallas Cowboys under the bright lights of Sunday Night Football on NBC. And yeah, this is a must-win matchup, not just for San Francisco in this primetime game, but also for the Dallas Cowboys. The Niners at 3-4, the Cowboys at 3-3, coming out of their bye week. Yeah, this is a game that both teams need to have. Why is that exactly? Well, let's talk about it. So for the Dallas Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys coming out of their bye week, but boy, the last time we saw them, not exactly looking good. Like, not just the last time we saw them, but just this season as a whole. But last time we saw them, going backwards a bit, they got their butts whooped really bad. Again, at home. The latest butt whipping at home came at the hands of the Detroit Lions. They allowed another 40 burger at home. The second one at home, the first one came at the hands of the New Orleans Saints. This time came at the hands of the Detroit Lions. Like almost 50 points. They almost allowed 50 points to the Lions. That was very bad. Prescott got sacked a couple of times. He also threw, I believe, 2 picks in that game, but it's been a while, so don't quote me on that. And yeah, the defense couldn't cover anything. Like the defense allowed nearly a touchdown on every possession for the Lions. That's how bad it was for Detroit. It was like one of the worst ass whoopings since that playoff game in January against Green Bay. That's how bad it was for the Cowboys. But now they have the bye week to reflect on it, and now they're coming into this game against the 49ers. But yeah, it's a testament to what it's been for the Cowboys all season. Like, there's been like a bad defense. I get it. They've been beaten up by injuries, but even when they were healthy, they weren't exactly doing good. Like they have trouble covering. They had trouble getting to the quarterback. And then offensively, there's no running game for the Cowboys, making the offense one-dimensional and putting pressure on Dak Prescott to pretty much run it all by himself, essentially. So that's why, like, they've been okay on the road and then pretty bad at home, if you ask me. Meanwhile, for my San Francisco 49ers, in their latest contest against the Kansas City Chiefs, they actually had a chance. They had a somewhat chance to finally get one over on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in their first meeting since Super Bowl 58. You know, the Super Bowl rematch that the media kept hyping up. And, they had a chance. Their defense kept them in it. They had chances to pull this one away, get at it. Unfortunately, they couldn't because Patrick Mahomes led 2 fourth-quarter scoring drives and it essentially put the game away for the Chiefs, 28-18. But the game was already slowly unraveling for San Fran, thanks to a really bad performance from Brock Purdy and most of that offense. And yeah, not exactly great. A great week for 49ers fans. I know some of you will be optimistic about it, stay positive about it, but if you remember how things went for me that week, that game, yeah, I mean, part of me expected the worst for that team, but how it went down, like, I was really disappointed. Like, disappointment was an understatement for that game. Like, I had my crash outs throughout the season so far, but I think this is the most I crashed out. And it's all a part of life. Okay, crash outs show how passionate you are about a particular thing. I mean, I had my crash outs about wrestling. I had my crash outs about my Niners. I had crash outs about some other particular things. Okay, it's a part of life. It just shows how passionate you are. Okay, if I crash out about something, it just means I'm passionate, even if it's like a negative thing. All right. So anyway, Again, this is a must-win situation for both of these teams, because if either one of these teams lose, no matter the situation in their respective divisions, it's essentially a death sentence. It's essentially like, yeah, you're kind of buried in this situation. I'd say there's a little bit of leeway for the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC East because, well, the Giants are basically already buried in the division. So they're essentially in a three-way race with the Eagles and the Commanders, surprisingly. They've been the surprise story of the season so far. Meanwhile, for my Niners, not so much leeway because, well, the Rams recently won their contest on Thursday night, and they actually got a little bit of a boost back. They're getting healthier now. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp just came back. And in Seattle, they just bounced back from their loss to the 49ers recently, winning in Atlanta. But they do have a tough contest coming up against Buffalo. But we'll see how that pans out. So, again, the Rams catching up. Arizona has a little bit of a tough contest coming up against Miami with the return of Tua Tagovailoa. So this is a pretty wide open division, but again, for the Niners, you can't afford to fall 3-5 if you want to keep your division hopes alive. Because essentially at this point, getting close to the halfway point of the season, if you want to keep your playoff hopes alive, essentially winning division is probably your best bet at this point. Even with all the injuries running wild, again, this is basically your best and only shot at making the playoffs. And that's being generous. So looking at the injury report for both of these teams, for the Dallas Cowboys, there are two specific notable ones to keep track of on the defensive side. So two top defensive players. The first one being Micah Parsons. The Cowboys were hoping to get him back for this game, and so was Micah Parsons himself. But unfortunately, he's not quite ready yet, and Parsons was disappointed about it. Parsons has been out for the Cowboys with an ankle injury he suffered against the Giants a month ago. So not quite ready yet for Dallas. So probably another week and before he comes back. Meanwhile, for corner Deron Bland, also not expected to play in this game, but we'll see. Crazier things have happened. So he hasn't practiced again this week after not practicing against Detroit. He was activated off IR, not activated, designated to return from injury reserve before the Detroit game, but he ended up not playing as he worked his way back from a foot fracture that he suffered in training camp. Keep in mind, though, if he does not play in this game against the 49ers, he has very little time left before the Cowboys won't be able to activate him off injury reserve. So if they don't activate him before their next game, I believe it's 21 days before the Cowboys won't be able to do it anymore. So, yeah, that's something to keep in mind for Cowboys fans out there. So, if he's ready to go after this game, then they shouldn't have a problem. For my San Francisco 49ers, they're a little bit more beat up than Dallas is because, well, that's been the theme again. Injury mania, running wild. Injury mania claimed another victim on the San Francisco side of things. And as I mentioned in the recap for the Chiefs game, yeah, Injury mania claimed Brandon Ayuk. He suffered a season-ending torn ACL, an MCL injury in that last game. Getting sandwiched by two Chiefs defenders. His sandwich got his ACL. He got sandwiched by those defenders, and it took his ACL and MCL. Pretty unfortunate, but I wouldn't say necessarily it's karma because that's like a terrible thing to say, but it sucks too because, yeah, for all the contract drama that he caused, yeah, it's just unfortunate. It just really is unfortunate because at the end of the day, he is one of Brock Purdy's best receivers, but he's been struggling all year. All these 7 games, other than the Arizona game, he's been struggling for much of the year. So, yeah, he's been put on season-ending injured reserve. We don't necessarily know when he's going to be back next year, but we're not even there at that point yet. Meanwhile, for Deebo Samuel, he had to take a hospital trip for his illness that he had during the Chiefs game, and it was a little worrisome but he ended up being okay, which is very good news. And he actually ended up practicing this week and ended up practicing fully later in the week. So he looks on track to play, which is a blessing for not just himself, but also the 49ers. So he looks good to go. Unfortunately, Juwan Jennings is likely to be out this game with a hip injury unless something happens in the last practice for San Francisco on Friday. So we'll see what happens. And then meanwhile, Nick Bosa and George Kittle, they were limited in practice with their respective injuries, but they should be good to go, barring any setbacks. So looking at the keys to victory for both of these teams in this essential game, that's going to determine their early playoff lives. For the Cowboys, you got to establish the run somehow. I know, I get it. You have one of the worst rushing attacks in the league that has Ezekiel Elliott, who's kind of washed, and Rico Dowdle. But this is still a Niners run defense that's pretty weak. So you do still have a chance to get something going, at least for this week, against this run defense that's weak in its own right in the 49ers. So I get it. Not exactly the most inspiring rushing group, but you got to establish something against a vulnerable run defense. And then defensively, this Dallas pass rush, for as much of its own struggles that it's had against pressuring quarterbacks this season, with or without Micah Parsons in the lineup, they still have an opportunity to force some turnovers onto Brock Purdy, force some lost chances, sack the quarterback, because the Niners front five, the offensive line, it's very weak. Outside of two players in Trent Williams and Puny. So the Cowboys can attack that offensive line, force Purdy into some critical errors, because the Brock Purdy that we saw early in the season, he hasn't been there. Meanwhile, for Brock Purdy on the 49ers side of things, he's got to play a much cleaner game. He's been having too many unforced errors that he had in the last game against Kansas City. You can't have that here against the Dallas Cowboys. You can't throw like unforced turnovers. You can't have too many lost chances. You just can't have this dirty game that you had against Kansas City and carry over against the Cowboys. You got to find what worked in those 3 wins that you had so far. Like, what happened to the scrambling ability? What happened to the all that running ability out of the pocket, and the simplistic passes, the balance between the simplistic passes and the downfield risky throws. Like, what happened to the somewhat creativity of this offense? So it has to come back to beat up Cowboys defense. So Purdy's not only got to play a cleaner game, but he's got to return to what worked to help the Niners win their games this season. And then staying on the offensive side of things, trust what you currently have in the passing attack. There's no more Brandon Ayuk for the year. So this is the time for Kyle Shanahan to see what he's got out of the current crop of receivers and utilize them. You signed him. That's why you got him. Use him. You got Ricky Pearsall with your first pick in the first round. First round pick with the 31st pick. So you got Ricky Pearsall. You just got him back. You got some reps in that Chiefs game. I expect him to be featured more. They also used Jacob Counting, so I expect him to be featured more. There's not going to be Juwan Jennings for this game until after the bye week. Deebo Samuel's still there. George Kittle's still there. Trust in what you got now. If it doesn't work, then, well, don't go for something big during the bye week, okay? It's like, we can't have any more big assets being traded away, like, those valuable picks. So, like I said, for this game, trust what you currently have in the passing attack. So, for my Niners, this is a must-win game. If you fall to 3-5, yeah, your wildcard chances, at least, they're basically dead. But again, you still have an open shot at the division because, yeah, it's kind of weak this year, if you ask me. But either way, you got to win this game to basically try and keep your playoff chances despite how beat up you are. So let me know your thoughts on the 49ers taking on the Dallas Cowboys this week in this must-win game under the bright lights of Sunday Night Football. Let me know your takes in the comments below. But until we recap this game, after the game, keep the lasagna very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of sports. This is DylanLasagna signing out of another 49ers preview to the next game. And until I see you, when I see you, peace out.